within that, when I look at Bitcoin, it is one of the most interesting things happening in that financial services pillar that I've ever seen. And the reason I like it so much are two things. One is it is for the first time, the cheapest and most frictionless payment rails we've ever seen. And so forget Bitcoin as an underlying currency. You don't have to care about whether it replaces fiat dollars or not. What you have to care about is that instead of paying 2.5% or 1.5%, I can basically pay virtually nothing to clear and basically process transactions and get money from one account to another account, right? From one address to another address, which is effectively what today's payment rails do for people. So what that allows you to do is much more profitably have businesses that can basically accept and take payments for anything, for any kind of good and service. And so as a result, more services will exist, and as a result, more interesting creative uses of those payment rails will happen. That's the most primary thing. But then the secondary thing, which is again going back to these trends, which I think is more societal in nature, is that you have an increasing level of mistrust around the monetary and fiscal policy for many governments, including the United States. And so when you think about things that could span anywhere from, at the simple end, devaluation to all the way at the other end, asset seizures by federal institutions, and if you don't think those are happening today. We're going to go through a devaluation in Brazil. We're probably going through a devaluation in India. These are two of the most important economies in the world. Poland just seized half of the sort of private pension assets. Poland, an EU country, right? So that they could basically lower their debt to GDP ratio so that they could borrow more money. And so if you're sitting in any of these countries, right, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I've worked hard, I've played by the rules, I've saved money, I'm trying to do very simple things with it, buy a house, have a vacation, pay for a car, pay for my kids to go to school, pass that on, pay for my daughter's wedding. And now you have to deal with these people who frankly mismanaged, didn't know what they were doing, were put in a position of power simply because they were able to check a box and have a degree and convince somebody else that checked a box and had a degree that they were just as smart as them. All this shit flows downhill and then you pay the price. What would you do? And I look at Bitcoin and I say, my God, like, you can protect your assets. So at a very, very basic level, if there's any fiscal or monetary instability in a country, or you don't believe or trust what's happening, you should absolutely have a percentage of your assets there. This is no different when the Nazis were killing Jews left, right, and center. They were able to basically transfer wealth into things like diamonds, and they were able to at least protect themselves somewhat. But even then, they were severely taken advantage of, right? But now you can take that to a much more structural, uniform scale applied to everybody, right? So if you're Venezuela and you've been playing by the rules and now you don't like what's happening there, you can get your money or your assets into Bitcoin and shield it from a government you fundamentally don't trust. I mean, how is that a bad idea? That's like, this is genius, right? I mean, we're sitting around here right now, most of our assets in US dollars, hoping to God that someone between Larry Summers or Janet Yellen knows what the hell they're doing. Just so you guys know, we've been printing money out the yin-yang for about 8 or 9 years, and now we're hoping that once the printing press stops, that one of those two people can figure it out. And all I'm saying is, and I know Larry very well, and I think Larry is a genius, and I think Larry would do a fantastic job. Even Larry can only control it so much. And so I, frankly, have worked too hard for what I've earned. And I just want to protect it. And I want to be able to do whatever I want with it. I don't want to be told what others think. I just don't give a shit what others think. And so that's why I think Bitcoin is so amazing. So as a business service, it's genius. And then secondarily, sort of like as an instrument of protecting assets and asset value, I think that will start as a developing world phenomenon, and I think it'll spill over to the developed world. And so you're talking about a 20-year arc. But this thing is going to rip. It's just going to continue to go up and to the right forever.
Well, I was also curious. So do you see merit in any of the other crypto assets, in particular Ethereum?
No.
And why not?
It's kind of like when you have a bellwether instrument, the gains typically go to the winner. So I'll use an equity example to make the case. When Obamacare passed, there was going to be a clear tailwind to health insurance. And, you could have bought a basket of health insurers, or you could have just bought United Healthcare. And the basket would have performed okay. United Healthcare 10x in the last 10 years. If you believed in smartphones, you could have bought a basket of things in 2010 or 2008 or 9 when the iPhone first got released. You could have bought, Nokia and Motorola and Samsung and HTC, or you could have just bought Apple. And Apple, frankly, just crushed everybody else. The point is that in any market, when there's a clear winner, it's not that these other things can't win, but there's a weird psychological effect that almost drives these second and third tier winners, which is a desire by people almost out of this sense of insecurity to not want to admit that there's a winner simply because they weren't the one to pick it first. And so what they do is they create these convoluted narratives and theses to basically anoint other winners. And yeah, can they win? Sure. But do they ever win like the category killer? No. I mean, do you really want to be long Lycos and DuckDuckGo, or did you just want to be long Google? There has been not a single market where you've been rewarded as handsomely for being long the number 2, 3, and 4 player as you are for being long the number 1 player. And again, it goes back to when things tip and go mass market, the average buyer makes the simple decision. And the simple decision is to go to the category defining winner and then set it and forget it. And so if you really want to make the money, my view has always been you find the one that's about to win: Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, and you buy it. But what you don't do is try to do some convoluted spread trade or, long the number 2, 3, 4, 5 person, hope that it's just really honestly, you can make a little bit of money, but there's so much brain damage and pressure and complication. It's just never worth it.
So you essentially view all the crypto assets as kind of like one category. Like you don't break them out into separate categories, because a lot of people would say like Bitcoin is a currency and Ethereum is, this platform just for decentralized applications, and they don't view them necessarily as competitive. I mean, there are of course people who do view them as competitive, but a lot of people just see them as fundamentally different things. But
I'll give you a different example. You could look at Mercado Libre as an incredibly complicated, and valuable delivery platform for Central and South America. And you could look at Wayfair as an unbelievable example of, furniture bought, purchased, and designed over the internet. I look at it and I'm like Spanish Amazon and furniture Amazon. And so I'm like, okay, I'll just buy Amazon. I honestly, Laura, this goes back to a philosophy of mine, which is what I've learned over time is that, I've really made my life much harder than it's needed to be. And I've overcomplicated a lot of decision making in my life. And as I've gotten older, what I realize is that the best decisions are the ones that are really instinctive and the most simple. And you can use enormous amounts of data, and you can find all kinds of clever ways of slicing and dissecting things. But at the end of the day, the simple decision tends to be the best and the most defensible and the most enduring decision. And one of the simplest decisions that you can make is to buy the category winner and wish that the whole category does well. Because if it does, as long as the category winner stays on top of the category, they will get the disproportionate amount of the gains. And that's just been completely true in markets, since time immemorial.
And I was also curious, have you been watching what's been going on in DeFi?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, okay. Well, then.
But I own Bitcoin. Boo.
And one other thing is, you also said in another interview that you disagree with the narrative that Bitcoin is digital gold. And I wondered why you disagreed with that. I don't feel that that's necessarily something that's incompatible with the idea that it's an uncorrelated hedge.
Yeah, I think that when the problem is that people get very philosophically strict when they talk about gold. I I think some people frankly own it because they believe that at some point we'll go back to a gold standard, or philosophically they believed so strongly in a gold standard. Other people legitimately do believe that there is some, industrial use, and that there is some portion of the trading value of it that ebbs and flows based on its industrial value, which isn't not untrue. I don't think enough people necessarily view it as like a pure inflation hedge or market hedge. And so that's sort of my comment, which is that to paint it in the brush of gold just again makes the explanation more complicated. And if you want mass market adoption, the one thing I've realized in anything, in any product, is you need true simplicity. And this is why I would encourage people to really embrace the simplicity of what Bitcoin is, which is it's basically schmuck insurance in case the people in charge really fuck it up.